Hey there, e-commerce Fastlane listeners. I want to take a quick moment and give a shout out to an amazing sponsor, Absolute Web. Now, if you're looking for a powerhouse team to take your Shopify store to the next level, then look no further. Absolute Web is a full-service design and e-commerce development agency. They've been pushing the boundaries of what's possible on Shopify for over 2 decades. Now, whether you need a highly customized design that truly sets your brand apart, a complex integration to kind of streamline your operations, or even a complete site implementation from the ground up, Absolute Web has got you covered. Now, they have an in-house team of UI and UX designers. They have architects. They really are the go-to all-in-one solution for e-commerce brands that really want results and they want them now. And get this, if you're currently on another platform and you're considering to make the switch to Shopify, the experts at Absolute Web have deep experience in migrations too. They'll make the process smooth and painless, and you can start reaping all the benefits of being on Shopify. So if you're ready to build, optimize, or even scale a high-converting e-commerce storefront, head on over to absoluteweb.com and you can learn more about their extensive technical and creative e-commerce services. That's absoluteweb.com. And now back to the show.
You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder, and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
Welcome to E-commerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve Hutt. Thanks so much for tuning in today. There's so many podcast choices out there in direct-to-consumer and marketing and just in the Shopify ecosystem in general. And I just really appreciate the fact that you're taking time and listening into today's show. I know that the landscape is extremely competitive. And, gaining an edge, I believe, is very crucial right now to success. And that's the whole reasons why I have this podcast. Now, my guest today is Juan. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Grip. Now, they're a Miami-based startup. Their company's at gripshipping.com. What's interesting about this company is they're kind of reimagining kind of the perishable shipping, and they're really helping e-commerce brands to deliver, I'd say, high-quality products to their customers' doorsteps. They're kind of like I call them maybe the final mile, the last mile kind of delivery company, but they really like to focus on frozen and kind of perishable products. So interesting. He brings like an incredible wealth of experience. He was head of logistics over at ButcherBox, which is one of the largest direct-to-consumer meat companies. He's also helped many other infrastructures of other frozen meat customers. It's so interesting. He deeply understands the challenges that e-commerce brands can face when shipping perishable goods, and that's the reason why he built Grip. So let's jump in and learn more. So, hi Juan, welcome to E-commerce Fastlane.
Hey Steve, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
My pleasure. Thanks for getting on here. I know we had to bump our show 1 or 2 times just to get here today, but you have such an interesting business model because I never really thought about the challenges that can happen shipping frozen or perishable products and its uniqueness, I say, to the market, to other 3PLs or your wholly owned warehouse, shipping to your garage. It's a different kind of mix. And I think you've learned a lot by being a ButcherBox. So that's why I wanted to have you on. So let's just kick things off a bit. I want to understand a little bit of the inspiration behind wanting to break away from ButcherBox or your whole career path leading up to ButcherBox and then deciding to kind of launch Grip Shipping.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so if you look at the ButcherBox story, it's a company that we bootstrapped from $0 to $600 million in yearly revenue in 6 years. And the bootstrap component of that is, extremely important because that means that we did it profitably. And that's the main problem that most brands, mostly in the direct-to-consumer for perishables, which is frozen or refrigerated, have faced or are facing. And I venture to say even some of the brands that are not even perishable, struggle with profitability. And a lot of that comes from, hey, how am I actually getting my boxes to the customers across the country in a good state, fast, so that I can keep them happy and maintain them as customers? So at ButcherBox, we bootstrapped the company again, $0 to $600 million in about 6 years. And a lot of the pain points started to come from logistics and shipping and fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, it's a company that does, great technology on the point of sale system, on the receiving the orders, and processing the orders. And it's a very beautiful brand that also it's one of the best sourcers of meat out there. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a logistics company. It's two completely different problems, two completely different sets of experiences and knowledges. So that's when, at ButcherBox as head of logistics, I started noticing that, hey, one, we're spending millions of dollars trying to figure out this problem internally by, hiring people and essentially like throwing people at the problem. And then two, we're spending millions of dollars in just, trying to develop software to keep up with all the shipments that we're sending. And it just didn't feel right. It's like, hey, this is not the strengths of this company. It's almost like, trying to rebuild Stripe or trying to rebuild Shopify. We're like, hey, just, use a merchant that can do it better than you, because that's the one thing that they focus on instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. So, at the same time, dealing through that problem and solving it internally, I started advising some companies that they would just reach out to me and say, hey, Juan, you guys have you seem to have figured this out at ButcherBox. I get my ButcherBox comes frozen. I'm a big fan of the brand and the company. Help us out. How are you doing this? So I started anecdotally helping some of these brands and just essentially telling them some of the things that we were doing so that they can, try some of that. But, that was one-offs. That was anecdotally. I would help them, improve their things by 5-10%. But at the end of the day, they really, really just needed a solution where they can offload these so that they don't have to spend resources in figuring something out that they know a company has a lot of technology and is the only purpose or the only goal that this company has when it comes to delivering frozen and refrigerated items in the mail. So that was the inspiration for the company. So we launched in 2022. I'd say we are definitely one of the fastest growing companies in the space. Incredible traction and mostly from just customers being very happy. Customers being satisfied and happy. And it doesn't necessarily come from having a perfect product, but it comes from being able to innovate and iterate on the product very, very fast with customers. So since day one, we brought customers into the equation and we said, hey, this is how we're thinking about solving the problem because we've experienced it before. What do you want to see? How do you want this product to be? And just keeping customers very close to the core of our company. So I think that has definitely been key to the success and the launch of the company.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thanks for sharing that story. I always think that this market, like the 3PL market, there's different sort of buckets. I would call them, like from an entrepreneurial side. There's brands that they're getting product market fit, and then what they're doing is they're shipping out of their garage or a warehouse that they have are leasing. Then the next step, they figure out, well, hey, you know what? I want to focus on the business and the marketing and the branding side of the company. I don't want to be logistics expert. I demand that from my customers and part of my brand experience, but I can't double down on the technology and the size of location that I need to make that work. So then they kind of go to the next step is getting a 3PL, and then they go through that vetting process, which I think is arduous, to be quite honest with you. I've had a lot of 3PL companies on here. Sure. It's an interesting way of trying to figure out who's next and why and the type of delivery and service that you're looking for. And then I think then the next step up from there, I think, is kind of what you're talking about, which is even more unique when we talk about frozen and perishable products. And I think it's very interesting that that's the reason why you are growing because of that, because there's lots of frozen, incredible gourmet frozen product, not just the meat products that they had at ButcherBox, but there's a lot of opportunity out there. But I think a lot of brands are very challenged, or they're very local only, and they're doing their own local deliveries in their local markets because they can't figure out how to do national delivery correctly. You figured that out. I know you have a lot of technology and modeling and things. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about your, I call it industry leading, it probably is, but you have some AI modeling and you really kind of understand this industry well. I'd like you to kind of share a little bit of that tech stack.
Yeah, totally. And to what you were just saying before, I mean, we see that. And that's actually what excites me a lot in terms of working with new partners and new company.
Right.
And is that when we work with them, we see this very big unlock of resources, and we see this unlock of business model where they could be, pretty much losing money, not necessarily providing a great experience to their customers, and then focusing very, very precious resources in trying to figure this out internally. when all of a sudden you take that off their hands and you perform like 10x what they were doing internally, and you reduce the cost by 30%, and you improve the accuracy of what you're shipping by 25%. Like, it's a big business unlock. So that's very exciting to see that happen with companies and get to know the different partners and how this helping them, and then just get along for the ride, right? Because if our customers grow, we grow. Is how we look at it. So in terms of technology, what we've built, and this is what we started with, is what we call a shipping engine. And how this works is every time one of our customers gets an order, we automatically read where that order is going to, and then we dynamically decide what's the absolute best way to ship that order to reduce costs and improve success rate. So it's very, very different than shipping something that is not perishable, because if you get a t-shirt or a pair of pants or a pair of shoes, if they're one day late, you can wear them the next day. There's no problem with that. Yes, you might not be 100% satisfied because we're expecting them on this date, and maybe you had a party or whatever, but just put them in the closet. You'll wear them for the next party or the next event that you have.
Yeah.
When it's food, that's not the case.
No,
it's either something that you're trying to eat yourself, feed your family, surprise someone, bring for a party that is actually, you're trying to eat it on that day, or like flowers or medicines. It's like very crucial stuff when it comes to the delivery. So either way, we designed this shipping engine that essentially says, hey, this is exactly how you need to ship this box. And we're looking at things as, temperatures through the journey, humidity, major weather events. We're looking at what type of product is it, insulation that we have available, space inside the box to make sure that we're optimizing the refrigerant amount. We are looking at how much refrigerant, whether dry ice or gel pack or a combination of both, we need to add to this box. And we're also looking at the final mile carrier on-time delivery to that specific final mile zip code, going through that specific route, so that we can always optimize for who's performing the best. Because that way you can drop the zip codes or the routes that do not perform good for certain carriers, and you can essentially use best of both worlds or best of all carriers, and that way you design your own internal logistics solution for your product. So it's all things that our shipping engine does just by reading a zip code and being integrated with your Shopify store. And we then decide what's the best way to ship the boxes, and then we ship them for the customers. So we're not only just like offloading the responsibility of fulfilling and shipping, but we're doing it in a way that, they would have to spend millions of dollars internally and hire a bunch of engineers to actually, figure out internally.
I see. So then I guess there's a couple other questions I have here. I'd like to unpack this. So when a client comes on board with Grip, then the idea is there's going to be a process of understanding the current business and kind of where you're at today, and kind of what are some of the challenges. I think you'll be able to help people through those challenges, like you've done with ButcherBox, and now you've continued on with your own business now with a lot of other brands. So once that's kind of understood, is like, what happens with these different types of shipping accounts? Like, because a lot of people have decided, well, I get a great deal because I've negotiated a rate with X carrier or X last mile carrier, and this is what I'm going to do. Or do you already have an opportunity where you've created the relationships with a lot of these kind of like first and last mile kind of delivery companies, and then you're able to kind of pass a lot of those savings on to your clients? Just want to understand the lay of the land from an account perspective.
Yeah, both. Ultimately, whatever's best for our customer. That's how we operate. Our customers sometimes come to us and say, hey, can you do X and Y? And we say, what's best for you?
Yeah.
And then, in partnership with them, whatever's best for you, we'll do. We have extremely strong partnerships nationwide that use, a variety of different solutions depending on where that final mile destination zip code is. And that's how we ship, based on either our partnerships or the partnerships that our customers have.
So it's another question I have for you is about returns and returns processing, because I could see this being a little bit of a challenge, and maybe some brands, might make a decision if it's ice cream and, for some reason it has to be a refund. It might be just refund and dispose of it like in your own home and not ship it back. I just want your feedback about like, what are you finding people do that have frozen or perishable product, refrigerated type products, and it turns out from a customer experience perspective, it was the wrong thing shipped, or a customer didn't like it. what's typically the process through Grip and how does that flow happen?
So in the perishables, so refrigerated or frozen, you can't actually take the product back because of food safety risks. I mean, yes, you can take the product or the box back, but like you're really not doing much with that product because you can't really restock it like you would, a t-shirt or a pair of shoes. So the game in this specific industry is about how do you reduce as much as you can those damaged or thought or complaint orders from customers by looking into the data. So as an example, like wherever you're over indexing in terms of the number of thought boxes that you're having for your customers, then that's where you focus the efforts on. And you can do things like, increase insulation, increase refrigerant. You can do a line haul to a specific region of the country. And that way, you keep your boxes in a controlled environment for a longer time. And then you inject, which gets priority with the final mile carrier as well. But like there's a mix of things that you can do to reduce the damage or thaw rate. And we've seen, very, very big impacts here. There's some companies or brands that we work with that come to us and are at like, maybe 3, 4, 2% of damage rate. And then we see them drop all the way down to under 1%, sometimes even like 0.5%, depending on the product. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the impact of the bottom line for something like that, it's massive. It's even much bigger a lot of times than like reductions on the actual pricing or shipping costs or fulfillment costs, because the impact with the lifetime value of the customer when you give them a damaged box, if it's perishable, as we were saying before, it's huge. Mm-hmm. Probability of them buying from you again, like exponentially drops. And then at the same time, you can't even take the product back. So you can't really just like, okay, I'll eat $15 in shipping costs and I'll take the product back. Like you actually have to either refund that customer or reship that box. And both of them are going to be extremely expensive because you have to just waste and throw out the initial product.
Right. That's even happened on Amazon lately. I think my wife purchased some apparel product. I forget what it was. And then she, there was a fit issue. And for them, they just said, and this was a leading brand too, by the way. And they just said like, just donate to charity, just because they know that the cost factor of having to send back something that's, worth $30 or less, it just, the net in it, whatever the margin was in it originally, yes, it's all lost, but let's not make it even worse by having to pay for it to come back, and then how is it being refurbished and it's a wearable product. So like, are they scared to want to resell something like this? Like, is it obviously donated again by them anyways? And so it's such an interesting market. I'm learning as I go here.
Yeah, totally. And a big piece of it is also like closing the information loop and understanding like how many people like your wife are receiving a product that is not what they were expecting, or a product that is damaged, or a product that is thought. Like, I think the key there is grabbing that information or having that piece of data inside your ecosystem so that you can close the loop. And before you ship the next box, then you already take that data into account for making that decision. So that's what we've seen historically within the industry, that there's a very like linear path of information, but there's really no loop of that data bringing that data back into the forefront of the equation to make your next decision for shipping.
I see. Okay, cool. So I'd love to hear a success story or a case study around a brand. I mean, I went to the website and you have a few listed there. Is there any one that's kind of notable that you can kind of share today? Because I think everybody, myself included, we're always really motivated to saying, hey, here's a brand that did it for this way. They learned about Grip or Grip shipping and they kind of decided to onboard with you. And then curious to understand kind of what the outcome was of vetting and then choosing your solution and what that meant for their business.
Yeah, of course. Early on and still now, we've found a lot of success with human grade pet food companies.
Okay.
That are doing like direct to consumer shipments for their animals, usually either dogs or cats. But it's an industry where, the cats or the dogs, they need to eat, and you can't really delay that box, because once they get used to eating that food, then you just need to keep on delivering. Like you need to be consistent and deliver that box. And at the same time, it's human grade, so it's very, premium and expensive products. So we've had a lot of success in that market with, most of the leading brands in the market, using the platform and working with us as partners. But we've seen, like anywhere from 30% reduction in shipping cost, and then 25 to 30% reduction as well in like directly damaged rates, which means you could be like at like 3% and then you come down to about 1% or like 2%, depending on where you were before and the type of the product, as I was saying before. But that market has been extremely interesting for us. The ready to eat frozen and refrigerated meals market has also been very, very interesting for us, because at the same time, right, like if someone gets on your schedule and someone is expecting those meals to arrive and you're actually part of the routine of that person, then you can't really mess up a delivery. And it's also ready to eat stuff for people, which there's a lot of labor that goes into it beforehand, so meals are expensive. So delivering that product, very, very good for the customer is important. But we actually started putting out case studies. I think the first one we put out was 2 weeks ago or last week. And we're going to be putting out one per week over the next few months. So this is going to be very, very exciting for us because, as you're saying, it's going to give us a chance to actually say, hey, look at this brand. This is what they're doing with us. And this is all great people and very good data-backed case studies.
It's interesting. I did a little bit of research before recording. So kind of being a good podcaster, I actually went to Instagram. I found a brand called First Seed, and it's pretty amazing. And what she's been publishing on her Instagram, I'll put some details on there. Do you have anything that you can talk about First Seed? And I think it's RT, Mala.
Yeah, totally. No, so great company, great brand. They, started a few years ago and started growing exponentially. And they were just shipping out of one facility nationwide.
Right.
And, it's complex, of course, because you can't really have these products for 3, 4, or 5 days on the ground. You really need to get delivered like 2 or 1 day, or max 3 days, depending on the product.
Right.
And then at the same time, it's, a company that's growing fast, but it still has a small team and limited resources. So you don't really have the resources to manage different partners and inventory systems and WMSs and just get complex with that. So she really, really needed a partner that could essentially, have like nationwide coverage with a very simple and, sophisticated system that could help her get to the next scale. So if you think about her, for example, like she's operating at a billion-dollar size brand scale when it comes to what we're doing for her, even though, she might be doing a few $1 million in revenue, right? So the scale that it gives a company like her has been great to see.
Yeah, this is lovely. I know I did a little bit of research too, just to kind of see some of her website traffic and things like that. It's so interesting kind of what she's building. And I just love the fact that she's so transparent. I'll put these links in the show notes, but First Seed Foods is her Instagram. And it's pretty neat kind of what she's doing. And she's been very transparent about why she's building it and why it's unique. Definitely makes a shout out to you, to Griff, being a very integral part in her success. She has a quality product and, and great packaging, and it's very timely in the market right now of kind of what she's, the type of food, she does like plant-based kind of Indian foods, but no oils or butters and all these different things. It's very unique what she's building, and people obviously love the product. So it's pretty amazing. So I just one thing I want to ask also, though, it's just like for me, I feel that like the market is evolving, and I feel that a lot of brands are thinking about how they can maybe expand their product catalog. And so I just want to make sure those listening today, and I just want to get your feedback. If someone's looking to expand their current product mix, or they really are unsatisfied maybe with kind of what they're currently doing, or feeling that they're really behind the 8 ball when it comes to fulfilling their own orders, and they really do want to grow their business. Like, do you really feel that there's an opportunity right now in frozen or perishable kind of food products? I mean, I know you brought up the cat and dog food, human grade kind of stuff. I think that's quite interesting too. Is there still like an opportunity, like direct to consumer right now in this space? Because it seems that the products, the footwear and the apparel markets and the electronic markets, things like that, seem to kind of dominate a lot of the social media kind of conversations around building a business, like the hard goods from China. But it just seems that slowly this is starting to grow. And then when I see kind of what you're doing, I think you may have a different lens to what's happening in frozen and perishable. So I just would love your feedback.
Yeah, so historically, if you look at the non-perishable e-commerce industry, it's been around for, let's call it 30 years. or almost 30 years. So this has been an industry that has been around for a few decades and has been incrementally or exponentially growing over the years to now be, of course, a very significant share of wallet for people in the economy.
Right.
Now, if you look at the perishable, which is refrigerator, frozen, direct to consumer category, it's not really even 10 years old. Like when we were getting started at ButcherBox, there were a couple brands already, maybe like Omaha Steaks and a few others, but like very, very niche and like gift giving specific, but not really products that people would use for their day to day, or not really a broad expansion of brands. So
Right.
when we were getting started, 8 to 10 years ago, like we first had to actually like educate people and then sell ButcherBox. We had to, in the original marketing messaging, say, hey, you can get a frozen box delivered to your doorstep. And that was like a big part of the whole marketing message, was like, hey, educating people that this is actually possible. And then through the years, we saw that need to educate people decrease. And that's because the consumer market now knows that they can go online and they can buy a box of food or something frozen, and it will show up in a great state to their doorstep. But that evolution only really happened, let's call it 5 to 6 years ago. Like before that, it was really not that big. So with the consumer now knowing that, and with more and more people knowing it, as the other folks around them start to get more used to the offering and to the industry, then the industry is going to keep exponentially growing alongside with the regular e-commerce as well. If you like, this is anecdotal, of course, but if you would do like a street survey 8 years or 10 years ago and ask like, hey, how many of you get something like perishable delivered to your house? People would be like, what? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
If you ask now, I can guarantee that like,
Oh yeah.
it's going to be a very, very high percentage of the population. And if they don't, they know someone who does now. So that's just going to keep spreading around. And that just means that there's much, much more space for, more brands, more products, more innovation. But then that, of course, needs to be paired with, companies like us, which are facilitating the industry as well.
I think people were trained to a little bit during COVID to have food delivery options available. Like there was, I think, even just grocery stores doing food delivery, and then all of a sudden meal prep companies, and we can rattle off like at least a handful of like the biggest national ones, a lot of independent ones that cracked open. I have even neighbors around me. I live in a complex with 40 homes, and like there's 3 or 4 homes here that every week I'm seeing the box drop down, the fresh prep and the this and that. And there's a lot of stuff that's being delivered to people in these really neat containers. But this is a local kind of last mile thing. I don't know about their national thing, how they're dealing it with these independent satellite locations. It's so interesting to me that I think that answers the question that we're saying. Like, I think people are more trained because of COVID. They like the convenience factor. And especially if it's, if it's fresh, or if it's, prepped meals ready to go, either warmed up or with a recipe. I think it's interesting, even if it's just like for 2 or 3 meals a week, it kind of like, it helps not having to buy those things, or you're busy with kids. And anyways, whatever it is, it's clearly a market that's growing. And I think that's where you fit in the mix. The other thing I was wondering too is like, what about like temperature controlled products? Maybe I wouldn't necessarily call them perishable or frozen, like let's say like CBD product, which is more down the regulated market. Or what about the wine market, where, red wine is supposed to be, white can, I guess, be to room temperature and then chilled when you want to drink it. But do you get involved or in the wine industry or in the CBD industry, or is that just kind of a different market altogether?
Somewhat of a different market, but in the need for a very similar solution. And a similar market that I'll mention as well is chocolates and protein bars.
Right.
Because more and more products are done, more natural with more organic ingredients that are very, when you expose them to heat or the sun, often they either change shape or flavor or even color profile as well. So all these products are definitely in need of a solution like this, and a partner that they can trust for the fulfillment and the shipping and the technology aspect of it. We are not like very deeply involved in, let's call it the chocolate or the like CBD industry per se.
Right.
But we do have a few customers in it, and we have a lot of interest from companies in this space. We've tried to stay super focused, just as we onboard more and more of the customers that are like perfect for what we've built, but there is a pretty big need on that other side as well.
Yeah. Okay, I was just curious, just because I talk to a lot of people every week, and I know wine was brought up, and I think there's some deregulation that's happening, certainly in Canada. I know that there is a lot of deregulation happening in the U.S. right now about
Yeah.
how they do wine and alcohol deliveries, especially premium brands, and a lot of celebrity endorsed kind of alcohol brands now are trying to completely understand this direct to consumer model. And CBD, obviously, by state is regulated based on certain markets where a lot of these brands can't even advertise on Facebook and Instagram and Google, so they're forced to do other ways of getting the word out. And so it's so interesting. What a just crazy market. So, any other comments you want to make about that, and we'll roll to the next.
With wines, I think it's very interesting, like specifically because a lot of wine shops are even forced to stop operations in the summer because they don't really want a bad experience to be tied to their name, to their wine, to their brand. Because if you open a bottle of wine at home that you got delivered and you have people at home and it's not good tasting wine, like you're just not going to buy it again.
Right.
So a lot of wine shops, what they do is they don't like to assume that risk. So they'll just say, hey, you know what? Like for the 4 or 5 months of the summer, we're just not going to ship to you. We're going to ship either before that or after that. But that's just because they don't have a solution for it. If they had a solution for it, or a partner that they were working with that could use as an example, like gel packs or, like humidity control packaging, then that's just a whole other story. They can just keep operating as usual.
Yeah. I even see a lot of success. I'm even part of that is these wine clubs where a lot of people are every quarter, they're getting a 6-pack or 12 bottles of wine. You pick hey, here's the specials for the quarter. And the rest is opened up to whatever you want and check, and off it comes. And,
Sure.
I guess in that particular case, it's more of a local kind of from within my province. So it's kind of a, 1 or 2 day delivery. And I don't think there's any temperature control. It just kind of is what it is. And wham, here it comes. But I could see more upscale wines that require a little more care. And like you said, by temperature controlled and certain types of boxes and things. So just didn't want to digress too much off into an area that you don't ship in. But I think there's a diverse range of people listening today that like, hey, we want to get involved in alcohol, or we're having our own challenges, or we're in CBD or other things, non-perishable, non-frozen, but you still that's where you put your flag in the sand. And I do appreciate that though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what we come from a industry knowledge, and a lot of what we build can be, horizontally expanded into the other categories, but that's, where we come from. So we're like doubling down on it for sure.
So let's say a brand decides to say, hey, you know what? I think this is for me, or at least I want to learn more. Can you walk us through what happens with the Shopify connection? Because that's the bulk of the people that are here. An order is placed and it shows up in their admin. Like, what's the technology now? Like, is there a private app that's connected to Shopify store? And then is it synced over to your shipping systems or your shipping engine? I'm just curious on kind of what those processes look like.
That's correct. So we developed an order management system internally that is, the first of its kind. It's specific for this industry, where it has all the different fields and variables that you need to increase probability of success for the shipments. And how it works is once one of our customers or partners gets an order into their Shopify ecosystem, then we'll read it through our private app. And then the order drops into our system, and it has a bi-directional connection with their Shopify store, where we're now like live reading all the updates that happen on this order. And then once we get it, we run it through the shipping engine. We apply all the attributes of how that order needs to be shipped. And those can also be, edited live on the platform as well. And then after we ship it, we get all the tracking, we plug it into back into the OMS, and then we also send that back into the Shopify ecosystem so that everything matches from a data traceability perspective. But within the Shopify ecosystem specifically, it's extremely easy to plug into what we built. It takes literally like 5-10 minutes to just start the data flow, and that way we take it from there.
I see. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that was a kind of an easy process, because I know there is that private app option, and that just kind of lets you map over all the fields and stuff like that, and then whatever the triggers, the webhooks or API pings that happen. So this is cool. You got that dialed in, and I know Shopify's been kind of pushing away a little bit from private app kind of world, because they're looking for more public apps. And actually just gives you a lot more exposure to the business that you offer by being discoverable in the Shopify app ecosystem. But I guess that's something that you can work on in the future. Like, how do we get approved as a public app And what benefit does that have to the grip shipping company? And I think would have a lot of benefits in the future. So something to think about.
Yeah, totally. Definitely something that we want to work on for the next quarter or so, for sure.
Beautiful. All right. So what do you think are some of the next steps then? So if people are listening, they feel that, that this could be an opportunity for them, that you've clearly have figured it out with ButcherBox. You're now bringing over a lot of that technology that you've kind of like accumulated over the years, improved upon it now in maybe in a smaller scale kind of direct to consumer space where pretty much anybody can get involved if you're in ready-made, perishable, these sort of things, and frozen goods. Like, what do you want our listeners to do as our next steps? Like, certainly go to the website first, but what other offers do you want to share with people today to see if this is the right opportunity for them?
I mean, the main thing is reaching out to either partnerships at gripshipping.com or myself, JCM at gripshipping.com. And I like to get involved with this because I like learning about companies. Like, I like learning about their product, about their network, about what they're doing now, about, how the different companies are ran. And, I get very excited when I speak with these companies. So I like to get very involved in the process. And what we do, which is what we can do for anyone that reaches out, is we essentially look at where their boxes are going right now. And we analyze the network. And we say, hey, this is the opportunities that you have in terms of optimizing refrigerant, in terms of optimizing boxes, where the boxes are going, carriers, facilities, any of it. We essentially run it through a shipping engine simulation that we've set up. And then we just meet with these companies to give them the results of it. So it's a very eye-opening process that we handle with possible partners.
All right, great. So that's JCM at gripshipping.com. Or there's partnerships at gripshipping.com. I'll have these all in the show notes. I think having this kind of logistics consultation and just analysis, as you said, in general, understanding what exactly is currently happening in your current workflow, then you can look at it and say, okay, I like what you're doing here, but have you thought about this? And here's how we believe that we can assist overall. And I appreciate the fact that you're getting like hands-on and get to see what's going on. Just, because it's fun. You get to learn. You're like, wow, that's a really interesting opportunity you have, what you're currently doing. Never thought of that. Or, hey, have you thought of this? Because here's what's working for ButcherBox and other brands that we've worked with over the years or currently working with. You may want to implement this sort of process and we can help you with that. So I think that's a really cool way of looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that we've learned and, driven this industry for the last years is looking at what else is up there and innovating with partners, either on the fulfillment or logistics front or with, direct to consumer companies. But as I was saying before, it's an industry that's only, it's called 10 years old. So there's so much to be improved upon and so much to be fixed and innovated on that, we're always open to looking at, different companies, different opportunities, how can we serve the final customer better so that we can serve our customer better? There's just so much that we can do.
Yeah, this is great. Well, Juan, thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing this stuff. It's just they're the first partner I've ever had that does these sort of perishable and frozen kind of fulfillment. It's a necessary challenge that I think a lot of people haven't thought of, even those listening today now. If you're thinking about expanding your product mix outside of your local markets, you still should contact Juan and his team because he has the opportunity to get you out of your local market and expand into other categories nationwide in the US. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity. So thanks again for coming on the show and sharing.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this is great.
All right. Have yourself a great afternoon. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.